One very common way to share information, both with yourself and with others, is to use QuickBooks reports and graphs. There's a difference between data and information, and QuickBooks actually does a very good job of giving us information. The data is the stuff in the background. For example, when we look at registers, all of that information just sitting there, we can kind of say, well, I can kind of sort of make a picture out of it if I try real hard. The QuickBooks interface, by giving us things like checks that we can write, makes it a little bit simpler to understand what the information is that we're looking at. But the reports and graphs take all of that information, what could be hundreds if not even thousands of transactions, and make it into very useful information, either in report format or in a graph format. There are many, many reports that you'll see. We're not going to use all of them, but most of them can be accessed from the reports menu. You know, if anything has its own menu, that it has to be important, so this is one. We actually have an entire reports center. We also have the company snapshot, which is available on our button bar at all times. Then you have something called memorized reports. You can make changes to reports and then memorize them so you don't have to do the setup again. We'll get to that in just a few seconds. You can also process multiple reports at the same time. I'm just going to go down to the bottom, though, and work with some of the basic categories. Everything about the general company and financials is under that category. Mainly, that would be the P&L, or the profit and loss, which would be for a quarter or a year, or all the way at the bottom, your balance sheet, which is the health of the company as a whole since its inception. You then have a category for customers and receivables, sales, jobs, time, and mileage, if you're using those. And that's kind of why it's its own category, because those are optional and many people don't use those. Vendors and payables, your purchases, your inventory, employees and payroll, if you're using that feature, banking, accountant and taxes, which includes things like your end-of-year reports. And then you can also look at budgets, lists, and some summary reports. So as I said, there's an awful lot that's available here. You will probably use some categories more often and also some categories more in general than you do others. I think what I'll do, just for our purposes here, is take a look at our customers. So let me come back up to customers and receivables. Part of that is our accounts receivables aging summary, so we can see who owes us money and how past due is it. We can also go to customer balances, open invoices, collections, and several other features. What I'd like to do right now is just look at the customer phone list. By clicking on phone list, it opens up and it just summarizes our customers. What I can see immediately is that we don't have any phone numbers entered into this particular company file, and that could be bad. So these reports aren't necessarily just for financial information. A lot of times through a report, it will give you a very quick and easy way to see if you have any holes that need to be filled. In this case, I'm going to get somebody to work to putting in phone numbers, and if we don't have them, to finding out what they are, so that we can have complete customer records. Reports are closed the way other windows are by using its own close button on the upper right. Let's go back to reports. Let's come down to sales, and let's do sales by customer summary. You will see that many of the reports in QuickBooks has a summary version and a detailed version, and it's just what it sounds like. Do you want to see basically a line item by customer, or do you want to see all of the line items for this particular customer? I'm just going to look at a summary, and that opens in just a few seconds. So here we can see that July 1st through July 10th of 2009, we had certain sales from Blaine Design and Brookfield Mechanical. We also had one sale from Mark Peterson, and the total $23,796. From the left side of the report, I can also see that this report is based on accrual basis accounting and the date and time that it was created. Well, some of these predefined reports are just fine, but you can also customize. One of the things we customize very often are dates. The easiest way to customize a date is to use the drop-down. Show me everything today, this week, this month, this year to date, next fiscal year. There's a whole bunch of options, and you'll probably find something that you like. So, for example, I could say, show me this fiscal quarter. Often when you make a change, or if you enter the date range yourself, you should come over and click on the refresh button. That makes sure that you're looking at the most up-to-date information. It's also helpful if you have multiple people working in the file at the same time. So we can choose from the drop-down. We can enter our own dates. We also can choose which columns we want to see. In other words, right now we're seeing the total only, but maybe I want to see a little bit more detail. Let's go ahead and see it by month. Since I'm doing this fiscal quarter, and then I choose to show the columns by month, then naturally I see a total of 4 columns. One for each month, July, August, September, and then the total. You can see how that one click gave me a completely different view of my data, and a very useful one. You also can change your sorting. One of the most powerful tools is on the top left side of the report window, and it's called Modify Report. If you click that button, you get to see a dialog box where you can change options for the display, the filtering of data, the header and footer, and even the fonts and the way numbers are displayed. Well, let's go back to display. These are some of the things that we were already able to change a little bit faster right from the toolbar. But an interesting thing that we can do is we can choose to temporarily show just this report on a cash basis. Remember the difference. If I'm looking at customer sales on an accrual basis, then this is everything that's been invoiced this quarter. If instead I look at it on a cash basis, it's going to show me everything that has been paid this quarter. Do you see how that could be a big difference depending on what question you're trying to answer? It's not that you should play games with accrual versus cash, it's just that it does make a difference, and in some instances you want to see it in a different way. A common thing to do is want to change the header or footer. For example, I could change the company name or I could add something to it. I could also change the report title. This is just a matter of selecting and typing. Using the Filters button is also very useful, where you can say that you want to use certain types of accounts. Depending on which type of report you're looking at, these options will be different. I happen to be looking at customers and sales, but if I was looking at something else, especially the filtering options would be different, but the display options might be different as well. As soon as I get this looking the way that I want, I can click OK. And if I like the way it looks, I can actually click Memorize. This will now store this particular setup as a permanent entry in my reports menu, and then I don't have to go through the customization all the time. Maybe I'll call this one Customer Sales by Quarter. A descriptive name that helps me understand what it is. There are also some built-in groups already in QuickBooks, and if I want to put it in a particular group, I can say Save it in a group. And I'm going to save it in the Customers group. And then I'll just say OK. I now have access to this report from the Reports menu under my Memorized Reports option. When it comes to sharing information, there are a variety of ways of doing it. I can print out a hard copy, and I also can email. When I email, I have the option of sending this report as an Excel worksheet or as a PDF. PDF is normally created by Adobe Acrobat, but it's a universal format that basically everybody can view as long as they have the free Adobe Reader on their computer. And in business these days, most people do have the reader, so PDF is a great option. It also means they don't have to have Excel. Another option that I have is to actually export this. And in the Export Report dialog box, I can choose a comma-separated value, or CSV, or a new Excel workbook, or I can import it into an existing workbook. So maybe I share this information every month with somebody else, an accountant, a chief financial officer, maybe just somebody in the sales department. I have several options here, including allowing them to append it to an existing workbook that's already out there. This is actually pretty powerful. A CSV file is really a generic file. Almost any program that runs databases or financial information can read a CSV value. So that's the very generic one if you wanted to get it into some type of proprietary system or third-party software. The next thing you do is decide if you need some information on how to use Excel, if that's your choice, and then I'll click on Export. Again, after just a few seconds, you get to see your information in a beautiful Excel spreadsheet. And if you don't know how to use Excel, on the bottom, on the first tab, is the QuickBooks Export Tips. If you give that a click, it will give you all kinds of information about where did your worksheet go, how do you make sure that that isn't exported, and all these other kinds of things about customizing the worksheet. Very, very powerful tools, all of which let you see reports, as well as modify them, and even export the information via email or even to different file formats.